My name is Keith Girouard. I'm the Regional Director for the Massachusetts Small Business Development Center Network. It's a long title, and we're located in the glorious city of Pittsfield, Mass.
And can you tell us more about what your office does?
Well, we're one of five. What you see in Pittsfield is only one small part of our organization. We're one of 5 regional centers, and we're part of a network of nearly 1,000 across the U.S. and the U.S. territory. So it's a big network of these. We're actually a program out of the Eisenberg School of Management, UMass Amherst. So we're sponsored in part at the federal level by the U.S. Small Business Administration, which that seems to be very important right now because there's a lot of programs that are coming through the SBA. We're also sponsored by the state of Massachusetts through its Office of Business Development. And as you probably are aware of, there are a few programs that are coming through the state, and that mostly people are interested in the unemployment insurance program. And then, of course, the university is a sponsor. Well, our typical day would be that we'd have a number of appointments that would be lined up with our clients, and we would meet with them on an individual basis. They would present their needs, issues, and we would help them work through it. So we're often working with business plans and business models, access to financing, financial forecasts, those kinds of things. If we're working with people who are already in business, we're generally dealing with management issues, management personnel, time, money. Sometimes they're looking for access to financing too. So all these services are free and they're confidential. We're working with a lot of people right now. Our typical week is probably 22 to 25 scheduled sessions with probably, another 30, we're responding to another 30 or 40 emails from about 20 to 25 clients. So it's very, very dynamic. Most of the people, we're kind of like in a little bit of a stall period in regards to a shifting or changing. Up to this point, people are mostly interested in accessing these programs that they've heard about in the media, and they're looking for assistance with that. They're looking for some guidance and direction. And then also they're trying to figure out, is this program right for me, or can I do combinations of programs? So we've been doing that. We've had a few people who are interested in starting businesses and or are looking to finish their request for funding cycle for a project or a program that they were looking to do before. So that's typically, but we're doing a lot of COVID stuff. Well, first of all, we'd say apply for all the programs. I mean, it's a stall right now because, as you know, the appropriations have been dispensed, but there's actions underway, as you know, the Senate and the House, to refund these programs. And we're talking about the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and we're talking about the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. So those two programs, there's a good likelihood that those are going to be funded. So we encourage them to check the eligibility criteria, look at it closely. If they want to talk about it, we're certainly available. But to, first of all, take advantage of all the relief programs that there are. And there's a couple of others that, if possible, I'd like to talk about in a minute, that people may not be aware of. The second piece of advice in regards to these programs is follow the rules. Make sure you really follow the rules and understand that. To some degree, all of this response has been, has been like we've all been pushed off a cliff and we're building the airplane on the way down. So some of these things are kind of coming into play as things are being rolled out. So make sure that you understand before you sign any contracts, before you sign any closing documents, make sure you understand the rules. And then also don't double dip, because there's a couple of programs that do cross over a bit on things. Like you can't in one program say you're unemployed and then in another program say you're employed. So you just have to be careful. Be mindful of any time set sunset clauses that are in there, because there are some timing issues sometimes for people. We also like to, and the planning side is we're encouraging people to consider the next 2 to 5 months as being an acute phase of what we're looking at. And the object here is to get through the next 2 to 5 months as whole as possible, and with as much access, either capital or as much access to capital. And this is kind of an unusual thing because we're encouraging people to use other people's money if possible. The interest rates on these loans are very low. They're deferred. For the EIDL, for example, it's 12 months. For the Paycheck Protection, it's 6 months. There's no prepayment penalties. Interest will accrue, but it's not that a lot of that money. We like to think that they could think about it as insurance. So you get to the next 2 to 5 months as whole as possible, and then after that, it's a different kind of planning and thinking and strategizing. One of the first things we do is we invite people to consider 2 parallel timelines, what we call real time, which is what everybody's in right now, responding to it. But then there's this other piece called development time. So what we're doing is we're drawing on our experience working with people in the Great Recession and what kinds of things happened, what seemed to work then, and what kinds of things didn't work. I know this is very different. It's presenting very different than what the Great Recession is, but we're trying to apply those things. So basically, a couple of things. Number one, if you think about those timelines and just sort of try to move both of those forward in ways that you can. A lot of people are focused on their feet right now, where they're standing and what steps they need to take. Those are important. We're also encouraging people to look at the larger picture and where this all might go. So we're also inviting people to think about a couple of things. Assume that your business model will change. We're also inviting people, and we'll work with them on this, is to break down the building blocks of your business and paying particular attention to your assets, not just your concrete specific assets, but also your intangible assets. And that's a little hard for people. Sometimes they need a little bit of help into really thinking through that. And then they need to ask themselves, are their assets deployed well? Are they in alignment with what's happening? Could they be, their assets be deployed in a way that gives them greater leverage for opportunity? And then of course, we're advising people to, if possible, to use other people's money. Well, they're not necessarily new. They're in place now, but people are not necessarily familiar. They're mostly familiar with the EIDL and the PPP, but the SBA has what they call an express bridge loan, which they've always had an express loan program before, but this is a little bit different. It's meant to be fast acting. They're saying 2 weeks or less. It's up to $25,000 and little paperwork. So that can help bridge people while they're figuring out other things. So if those businesses that really need cash like right away, that's an option. And they would go through their bank. And the bank needs to be a 7A, what's called an SBA 7A approved lender, which most of the banks in the area are. So that's one. There's an IRS program that people are not necessarily familiar with, and it's an employee retention credit. And basically it's a refundable tax credit against certain employment taxes. That's equal to about 50% of the qualified wages of an eligible employer. Again, there's a lot of different technical moving pieces with that. We had at least one inquiry on that recently. There may be others out there that might be interested. And then, of course, is the unemployment benefits that the state is providing, the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, or affectionately called PUA. But they also have 2 other programs that for people who are receiving prior to the pandemic unemployment benefits. They can extend that, and then ones who may fell out of the program can actually rejoin. So those are just some of the things that we're aware of. Yeah, well, that goes along with that little piece that I was mentioning before about the development piece. And basically it's a term we're using to draw people's attention to this idea that things won't get back to the old normal. As much as we want that, as much as it's hard to say that, as much as we would like that, it's not. Through the Great Recession, they called it the new normal. So we feel like, well, we need to have a term for this one, so the next normal. And the process of doing that, we're referring to it as nexting. And the idea here is that we need a different approach to the planning part of it. There's a quote by Marshall Goldsmith that said something like, what got us here won't get us there. So the idea is what will get us there. And it's based on a number of assumptions. So what we're doing is we're building out what we think are thoughtful frameworks to kind of frame this stuff around, along with some tools, worksheets, exercises to help our clients start to do this. I think you can reasonably predict a number of things. Number one, customer buying behavior is going to be very different. Some of it might be the same, but there's going to be a lot of very different. Supply chains are already disrupted. We can expect them to be disrupted more, and then they'll reform, and then it might be like a little bit of an accordion for a while. You know, they'll be disrupted, they'll come back together, and so forth. So we're figuring that there's going to be some issues around supply chains, and at least for a while, folks' access to discretionary income is going to be probably pretty low. So any model or business modeling needs to take that into consideration. And lastly, we're looking at this concept of marketplace, and we're thinking that the concept of marketplace that we've been operating for a long time will change. And it's quite possible it'll go from what could be viewed as a single opt-in opportunity to a double opt-in opportunity. And basically what that means is and this is kind of a crude way to express it, but like they're stores, and you as a customer opt in or not, depending upon your needs, your timing, your lifestyle, right? There might be a time, and it's already happening online. There's already these places that are being created with double opt-in, and that's a whole other kind of thinking and response. But basically, the buyer's opting in and the seller's opting in. So I guess a real life an example of that might be like farmers markets. You know, the farmers opt in to be present at a place, and then there's transactions that occur. Sometimes there's confusion about who we are and who is the SBA. Sometimes they think that we are the SBA. We do work very closely with the SBA, and they are a funding partner of ours, and they consider us a resource partner. And so we work closely with them, but we're a different organization entirely, and we're a program out of the Eisenberg School of Management, UMass Amherst. And it's a program like 1,000 across the country in the U.S. territories. We're organized here in Massachusetts as a state network. This stuff is still forming for us. We are starting to introduce some of this kind of new work with our clients. What's becoming clearer to us is that the focus in the next piece, once we get through the acute phase and the demanding and stress and anxiety around that, it's about being relevant, continuing to be relevant as the changing environment. So that's going to require a couple of things. That's going to require a certain kind of agility in terms of planning, in terms of marketing, in terms of operations, and it's going to take a number of iterations. So people have to be willing to try stuff. But I think what would govern all of this would be a disciplined, structured approach. And that's the kind of thing that we're working out now.
All right. Well, thanks, Keith.
First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity. It's very nice.
Welcome.
We appreciate that. And we've enjoyed our working relationship with downtown Pittsfield Inc. Actually, when we were all in North Street many years ago.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, this is great.
All right. Well, good luck with all that. Thanks
again. Thank you so much. You're welcome. We'll be in touch. Okay. Bye-bye.